Do you lie? Oh, do you? Yes. Anybody here not lie? Oh, if you put your hand up, you're lying. There you go. Who do you lie to the most? Yourself. That's interesting. Anybody else? What do you lie about? What kind of things do you lie about? Come on. What do you lie about? How great I am. Oh, okay, fine. Come on then, Anne. Your age. Wow. Tina's got a big birthday tomorrow. She's not lying about her age. What else do you lie about? Money. Yeah. Well, yeah. What else do you lie about? Your health? Yeah. What's that? Family? Yeah. Say I'm okay when I'm not, yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Lying. Remember that Jim Carrey film, Liar, Liar? It's a great film. Now, if they were telling the truth, there was a survey done, and it asked people what they lied about. 91% of people surveyed said they lied regularly about matters that they considered trivial. Do you agree with that? 36% lied about important matters. And here's where it gets really interesting. Who did they lie to? 75% lied to friends. 80% lied regularly to their parents. You've never done that, have you? See, I wanted the kids out. See, I told you. 73% lied to their siblings. And 69% to their spouses. For the last fortnight, I've been looking at this whole subject, as will become apparent why in a moment. But I have real difficulty, I think, wrapping my mind around the idea that people would lie as much as that. That was a bit of a shock to me. And not just that how much they would lie, but one of the really sad things that survey shows is how often people actually lie to their parents and their siblings and their spouses, to their family. But somebody said that. Why? Why do we lie so much? And why do we lie in particular to our family? Now, God knows that people are like that. They lie. You are a liar. And so am I. We all lie. But it's a little surprise then that Paul would challenge the Christians that he was writing to in Colossae when he says, look, don't lie to each other. You've taken off the old self with its practices. In other words, lying may be a part of how you lived before you became a Christian. That's the old self. But now that you're a Christian, you need to understand God expects change, and he doesn't want you to lie. He expected them to be truth tellers, not liars. Now, if you've been following along in our Bible reading plan this past week, reading through the Old Testament, we came to a case study in lying, didn't we? My gosh, lies, damn lies. Lies everywhere. And the effect lying can have on a family. Just to give you a little background, we've got the story of Isaac and Rebekah. They were a godly family in the days of the patriarchs. They're still held in high regard by Jews who will often refer to their ancestors as Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And you remember last week we were looking at Abraham and Sarah, but today we're going to look in particular at Rebekah. Now keep in mind, this is all about the lineage of Jesus. Rebekah is crucial, you can't see that very well, but she's a crucial matriarch in the lineage that leads down to Jesus. She's the wife of Isaac, the mother of Jacob, from whom the 12 tribes of Israel descend. It makes her Abraham's great niece. And the big thing to remember is that it's all about ensuring that messianic lineage down to Jesus. So we were in Genesis chapters 25 and so. Amazing. Amazing. Genesis 25, Rebecca becomes pregnant. And we are told, when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red. Welsh, you see, Welsh. And his whole body was like a hairy garment. When I was born a little bit early. And I was covered in that downy stuff, you know. And my mother went, what's that? I wonder whether Rebecca did that. Anyway, his whole body was like a hairy garment. So they named him Esau. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So he was named Jacob. Now, I'm sure you've come across this story before, and you know quite a lot about it. Here's a photograph that was taken at the time. Happy families. Happy families. There they are. Mum and Dad, Jacob and Esau getting along, hanging out together, having a good time. They look very wholesome, don't they? Yeah, very peaceable. Just the way all families are, isn't it? Yeah? Your family's like that? Yeah. Liar, liar, liar. Yeah. It's not quite how this biblical family turned out, though. As we saw in our Bible passages during the week, they're not all that wholesome and peaceful. Rebecca encourages Jacob to lie to his father, and worse still, Jacob doesn't even think twice about it. Jacob's lying like a dog. Now the question is, why did he lie? Why do you lie? Why did Jacob lie? And it's been bugging me. It bugs me as to why I tell lies. I'm not having any of this nonsense about this, only a little white lie. A lie is a lie is a lie. Why do we lie? Why would Jacob lie? Well, let's look at the text. If you've got a Bible with you, or there's a Bible in each pew, or maybe you've got a Bible app on your phone, open it up with me to Genesis 25. And we'll just explore this a little bit this morning to understand lying and how we can tackle this in our own lives. The answer in reply to the question, why would Jacob lie to his father, is there in Genesis 25, verse 27 and 28. The boys grew up. Esau became a skillful hunter, man of the open country. You know, Jacob was content to stay at home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now, anytime you see something in Scripture, it's there for a reason. And here, God's telling us why Jacob was willing to lie to Isaac. Isaac loved Esau more than he loved Jacob. Favoritism in a family. Rhetorical question, but do you know about that? Lots of us in our family life come across this. Favoritism. Now, why on earth would Isaac love Esau more than Jacob? Apparently, Esau was a man's man. A skilled hunter with his hunter Wellington boots, his shotgun folded over his arm, his flat cap and Barber jacket. A man of the open country. While Jacob was a bit of a mummy's boy. Let's be honest about it. Stays amongst the tents. And Jacob had become something of an embarrassment to his dad, and, well, Jacob knew it. So when the time came to lie to Dad, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? He's resentful. Of course he's going to lie. But secondly, he lied because he had contempt for Esau. As far as Jacob was concerned, Esau doesn't deserve this blessing from his father. Esau would only squander it like he did everything else in his life. Esau has made all kind of bad choices, and Jacob is convinced that he'll make bad choices when it comes to the blessing his father was going to give him. So, for example, if you read on in the text in Genesis 25, once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country famished. He said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he was also called Edom. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." "Look, I'm about to die," Esau said. "What good is birthright to me?" But Jacob said, "Swear to me first." So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. It's a little bit difficult to understand what's going on there, because in our culture, things like birthrights aren't necessarily something that we are familiar with. But it's mentioned several times in this passage. It had to do with inheritance, and particularly the inheritance the boys would receive. According to tradition, the eldest son, Esau, would receive twice as much as the other sibling, in this case, Jacob. This was to compensate the firstborn for taking care of the estate when his parents died. So what Esau's doing here in this little passage, you'll see, was giving away half his inheritance for a bowl of minestrone soup. Basically, that's what it is. It's insane. In fact, it was so insane, the author of Hebrews, in Hebrews 12, talks about it. He says, "Look, see to it that none of you is godless like Esau, who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the eldest son." So we're starting to understand something about Esau now. Esau's a guy driven by earthly passions. If he wanted something bad enough, being a man's man, he was going to get it, no matter what the cost. He wanted it, and he got it. So Jacob sees his brother as someone who doesn't deserve what he's about to get from dad. It doesn't seem to matter to Esau anyway. I mean, it's not like Esau cared about anything. So Jacob lies. He lied because he resented his father. He lied because he had contempt for his brother. But he also lied for a much more basic reason. And that is, he didn't trust God. If you go back in Genesis chapter 25, a few verses, we read in verse 23, the Lord said to her, that he's talking to Rebekah, "Two nations," remember she was carrying twins, "two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other." Now look at this. This is God speaking before the birth. "And the older will serve the younger." The older will serve the younger. Which one was the older brother? Esau. Who was the younger brother? Jacob. So in other words, even before they were born, God said what would happen, the tables would be turned. You see, if God wills it, even tradition and convention can be turned upside down. Jacob will rule over Esau. That was the promise. But blinking Jacob doesn't see fit to trust God to fulfill that promise. See, when people don't trust God, they will end up doing all kinds of selfish and often wicked things. Why? Because they see the outcome of any situation as depending upon how well they personally can manipulate the circumstances. I asked you a moment ago, why do you lie? I asked myself that question. Why do I lie? The truth is, I am trying to manipulate the circumstances. It's why wives lie to their husbands about money. Go and see what's going on there. Dear me. It's why children lie to their parents. They're trying to manipulate the circumstances. It's why men lie to their wives. We're trying to manipulate the situation for our own benefit. True? Think about it. And of course, that's why Jacob lied to his dad and why he cheated his brother. He didn't trust God to do anything about this situation. And when people don't trust God, as I said, they'll do all kinds of things. They will lie. They will cheat. They will gossip. They will steal. So in every sense, I can say, when I am busy lying, there's a fundamental issue going on in my life. I'll do whatever I've got to do because something's shifted in terms of the way I understand my relationship with God. And that's exactly what we see here. People, me, you, behave like this because we haven't learned the basic principle of faith in God. The basic principle of faith in God is this: when you think nothing's happening, be assured something is happening. When you think God's not looking, be assured God is looking. You try and get away with things, don't you? Do you? Yeah, of course you do. Don't lie to me. We all do. We think that it won't matter. God doesn't see it. God's not interested. I think he is. Is he sitting idly by on a cloud up in the sky looking at his subscriptions or notifications? I don't think so. He sees everything. If we ain't God aware, if you don't have faith or trust in God, then of course you're going to lie. Of course you are. No skin off my nose. Now what's really odd, and we mustn't ignore this, was of course Jacob was a good Baptist. Well, he was. He was a very, very religious man. He'd sure as heck fit right into any church. But fundamentally, he didn't trust God. See, you can be very religious, but not trust God. You remember, he was running for his life to get away from Esau. He stopped overnight at a place called Bethel. And while he's there, God gives him a vision. It's interesting, isn't it? God hadn't given up on Jacob. And Jacob's so impressed by the vision, what does he do? He offers to make a deal with God. Deal or no deal. Oh, it's a great program, isn't it? When I visit some of you at home, you don't switch the television off when the pastor arrives. Deal or no deal is on. Well, I'll sit and watch it with you. Yeah. Look at this. Genesis 28. This is what we read last week. If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I'm taking and give me food to eat and clothes to wear so I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I'll give you a tenth. You've never done that with God, have you? Liar. We've all done it. If, then I'll do that. If, I'll do that. Oh, he's just like you and me, isn't he? Dear Jacob. He's very religious, he prays, but he doesn't trust God. If you'll do this for me, give me food, clothing, show me a safe return back, then I'll set up a pillar, then I'll worship you, then I'll give you money. Have you ever come across Dilbert? Dilbert? Oh, I love the comic strip, Dilbert. Okay, this is Dilbert, okay? And I think Jacob had a Dilbert kind of faith. In this one, Dilbert is there and he says, I decided to start a discount religion. Tithing, sorry David, the tithing would only be at 5%. And he goes on, and I'd let people sin as much as they wanted. Whee! Hey! The only problem is I don't want to spend time with anyone who would join that sort of religion. That's Jacob. Jacob wasn't sold out for God. Jacob wanted a God he could manipulate. Just like he manipulated everybody else. And it's interesting, isn't it, as you read through the text this week, did you see it? God kind of said, go on then, for a while. Get on with it, son. Yeah, Jacob chose his own path, but eventually the consequences of Jacob's lies and his manipulations caught up with him. We see that not least, Sarah and I were talking about this morning. He ended up working for his uncle. Now, is it Laban or Laban? I don't know. He worked for him for 20 years in order to marry Rachel and receive the dowry that he should have been given. The only problem was, of course, that Laban was more of a manipulator and more of a liar than Jacob had ever been. Lies, damn lies, all over this passage. My gosh. And then when Jacob did finally get home, his mum was dead. Well, Jacob got what he wanted, but it cost him a major portion of his life, and it cost him the ability to ever see his mother again. It didn't have to be that way, but when he decided not to trust God and seek rather to manipulate him, it's inevitable. See, God says, if you're going to be my child, you need to trust me. You've got to quit trying to manipulate things for your own ends. You've got to embrace truth and you reject falsehood. I love that verse in Isaiah 63 where God says, surely they are my people, children who will be true to me. And it goes on, and so he became their Saviour. People who trust God need to stop lying. That's the truth, isn't it? Stop manipulating situations. Stop manipulating people to get your own ends. But you know what? There's a way more to being a Christian than simply not lying. It's not enough for us just to not lie. We're told that we should replace that with telling the truth. Paul in Ephesians 4 tells us we should be speaking the truth in love. And that's important, isn't it? Speaking the truth in love. It's not always done, particularly in families. I read an article a while back about the growing problem of sex trafficking and sexual abuse. Stories of 4 young women who'd been caught up in this tragedy, being helped by a Christian charity. They spelt out their stories. In every one of those stories, there was a familiar and similar theme. These girls did not think they were worth much. And so it was easy for pimps to worm their way into these girls' lives. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty convinced that those girls didn't have people in their lives who told them the truth, that they were loved, that they were precious in the eyes of Almighty God, the truth that their lives were too important just to be thrown away as commodities, the truth that they were loved and treasured by family and friends. If you don't speak love into people's lives, if you're too busy telling the truth but don't have it couched in love, it can wreck people. Too often in families, people don't tell each other truths in love because they presume that everybody in the family knows they're loved and cherished. Can I encourage us all to stop presuming that? You've heard the story about the guy who was challenged by his wife one day. "You don't love me," she said, to which he replied, "I told you once on the day I married you that I loved you. Isn't that enough?" And you just want to scream. No, it's not enough. When's the last time you told your husband or your wife or your children or your grandchildren or your sister or your brother or your mum or your dad, your aunt or your uncle, "I love you"? Maybe today, the first thing you'll do when you go home is pick up the phone, make a call and just say, "I just called to say, I love you." You see, another aspect of this principle is that the truth may be the truth, but it needs to be spoken in love. Many family members get upset with one another because they have a list of expectation that the other person isn't fulfilling, but they never have a loving conversation about it. They just criticize. yell at each other. Why do you always expect me to do everything around here? Other phrases Sarah uses. Why? Liar, liar. Why don't you appreciate the work I do? Who's going to pick up these clothes? Why is it always left to me? Now, those things may all be true, but you know from your own life, as I know from mine, the way you say those things. Are they spoken in love? Speaking the truth in love means we layer our frustrations with each other by telling the other person how much they mean to us. So as we wrap things up this morning from these beautiful passages we've been looking at, I've got one last question to address. Do you trust God? What if you're having trouble trusting him? What if you can't seem to help yourself? What if you're lying to yourself? Just trying to manipulate things for your own ends, rather than just letting go, letting God. As I was reflecting on the passage and reading ahead a little bit, and you'll see this tomorrow, it's interesting. As you follow the text of Genesis through, things do eventually change for Jacob. It happened one night as he was making his way back home after 20 years. He's on his way back to be hopefully restored to his family, to make peace with his brother who threatened to kill him. He's not sure that he's been forgiven yet. So even in this attempt to reconcile with his brother, Jacob is still trying to manipulate the situation, and that is until something happens. He meets God. And in Genesis 32, we read these words. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What's your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you've struggled," or the word there is wrestled, "with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It's because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." At that point, everything changes for Jacob. At that point, human history takes a massive turn as God fulfills his purposes through the lineage that's eventually going to come down to Jesus. At that point, he begins to trust God more completely. And it's all because he met with God and wrestled with God. I read something the other day written by a Christian wrestling coach. Commenting on this passage, he said that the hip is the wrestler's pivot point, the core of his strength. Get the hips moving and you can tip your opponent. See, God couldn't give Jacob the blessing he desperately needed until Jacob could no longer rely on his own strength. And it wasn't until the angel of the Lord dislocated Jacob's hip that Jacob surrendered and received what he'd really wanted all along. God's blessing. If we're having trouble trusting God, maybe we need to come to a point where, wrestling with faith and with God, we become so aware of how weak we are and how much we really do need God's power in our lives. That's the truth. God speaks his truth over us this morning in love. And so we can trust him to help us be good parents, good siblings, good people to work with, good people to associate with. People who've got each other's backs, who don't lie, and always speak the truth in love to one another.